I may, I will start. And we will have a journey with you for 2 days and 4 sessions, 2 sessions today and 2 sessions tomorrow. And I am very excited to be here with you. And I want to thank SEAMEO for inviting me. This is absolutely my pleasure. And I do this. And this morning, we will have few topics that we will be discussing. And one of them, I want to start with the introductions. You heard about my background when Suhaila was so kind to tell that to you, but I would like to add a few things that what is kind of my expertise about the special education and inclusive education. So you would know where I come from and where kind of my thinking comes from. Then I will say a few words about yesterday. You had a great training day yesterday already, and you also had a group work in the afternoon, and I was very impressed with all kind of your thinking and presentations. Then we will be talking about inclusive learning and teaching strategies and pedagogies and specialized materials and resources. And I was thinking that I would kind of first say something about each topic, and then I would like to kind of have discussion, questions and answers or comments. So please feel free to type to the chat box whatever comments or questions you might have, or raise your hand or turn on your microphone, and then we would go through those ideas of yours before moving to the next topic. And I hope that this is okay with you. And I have chosen to this presentation pictures about nature. I have also pictures of students, but I have pictures, all the pictures that are from nature are from Finland. And they are kind of, those pictures are taken by myself or my husband. And I just want to show you kind of the environment that we live in Finland and where I lived in Finland. I moved to Malaysia a year ago. So I'm a very, very new Malaysian. And I will be living here for 3 years. So 1 year is now gone and 2 years to go. But the pictures will kind of show you the Finnish environment, because I will be talking with you about learning environments today, and a very important part of learning environments is also the nature around us, especially when we talk about the special education teacher or children with disabilities. The nature and environment around those children is also, it's of course the place where they live, but it is also kind of the place where they learn. So that's why I'm including these pictures to the presentation.
Hello.
So
hello.
About my
Miss, can you please turn off your microphone? Miss Tanzin, Myanmar.
Yeah,
Miss
yeah, we
Tanzin?
can hear your conversation now. Yeah.
Okay.
So about you heard about my work history, but I just want to tell you that when I started my career in education 30 years ago, I started to work as a special education teacher in 1992. And I worked as a special education teacher for 9 years. And I worked both in special education classes, and then I worked in the mainstream school as a kind of resource teacher, that I was teaching students special education students who were integrated to the mainstream schools, but they still, of course, need special education support. So I was working in mainstream school and supporting the special education students in those schools. So both working in class and working as a part-time teacher for some students. Of course, full-time for teacher, but part-time for students. So they were not in special education class all the time, but they were there in mainstream classes most of the time, but only for some subjects they were studying with me and I was the special education teacher. We will be talking more about these kind of structural issues later. But then I started to work as a principal in one of the schools, the head teacher in one of the schools in Finland, and I then had special education classes in my school. So also the regular classes and special education classes. And then I started to work as a head of education, and that means that I was responsible of all the schools in the area. I had 20 schools that I was responsible for, and I also had one hospital school. And hospital school in Finland means that some students have medical conditions that they are required to stay in hospital for a long period of time. That might be a kind of a cancer that they need to be treated, like leukemia, or for many children, it is a mental disorder that they are not doing well mentally at all, and they need to be hospitalized for a long period of time. And during that time, they need education. So in Finland, we have a few hospital schools that the children can go to when they are hospitalized. And one of those schools were in my municipality, my area, and we were working with those children also. Then I started to work with the government. And when I was working at the Finnish National Agency for Education, that was a time when in Finland we wrote the latest national core curricula that we are using at the moment. And I was a part of the team who wrote the special education sections of the curricula. And we will be talking more about curricula later also today or tomorrow. And then at the Finnish National Agency, when we got the new curricula, we also need to implement the new curricula in Finnish schools. So we launched a special education development program that was a national development program, and I was leading that program. And then, among other things, there were other things, of course, that we were doing, but those were related to special education and inclusive education. And then I moved to work for the minister in the ministry. And then from there I transferred to work for the World Bank. And that was a year and a half ago. And now I am here in Malaysia. I still have my job at the ministry in Finland. I have a leave of absence. So after the 3 years here, I need to decide if I go back to the ministry or if I do something else. But it is the decision that I do not need to make today. And then about the degrees. That is a picture of me after my doctoral thesis dissertation. It was a big celebration, and I really liked the event, and that is the hat that you get in Finland after you get your PhD degree. And then you also get a sword It's a long sword. So the sword means that after PhD studies, we promise that we will defend the truth. So I have the PhD, and then I have been doing some leadership degrees, but then I have master's degree in special education. So that was my first choice of jobs. I wanted to study special education. So I hope that you kind of get the idea that this inclusive special education is a topic that is very close to my heart. And I was born in Finland in a very rural area, up north, Lapland. Only few people living in the small town that I lived. And my mother was a primary school teacher. She was teaching first and second graders, 7 and 8-year-old children, whole of her life before she retired. And I went to school in a small village school that it was 1975. And at that moment, the special education in Finland was very segregated system, not inclusive at all. But in Lapland up north, in rural area, it was a very inclusive environment because we had only one school, and other schools and the special education schools were so far away. So also the special education children came to the same local school with everybody else. So I saw all the children in my classroom when I went to school myself. And because we had those special education students in our small school, we also had a special education teacher who drove to visit our school once a week to help both the students to learn, and also he helped the teachers in our small village school how to teach the special education teacher. So that special education teacher who came to our small town school once a week was teaching both students and teachers. And I think that was a very advanced model already in 1975. But because I saw that special education teacher coming and giving all that support, I started to think that, wow, that is something that I want to do. I would like to be that kind of teacher. And so that is what happened, actually. So I did that work then in 1990s for a while, but it was kind of my first experience to the inclusive education. Then later, when I was 13, and it was time to go to the 7th grade in Finnish system, and so we have in compulsory education we have grades from 1 to 9. And at that time, when I went to grade 7 and I was 13 years old, it was not possible to study anymore in that local small school in our village, but I needed to go to a bigger school far away from my home. So I needed to move to live in a dormitory. So I moved to live in that kind of a dormitory at that time. And then I noticed that this is very difficult time for special education students, because the dormitory meant that you need to be very independent and kind of you need to have a capacity to do things by your own. And many special education or disability students didn't have that. And then, of course, at that point in Finland, we also had a special education school system going on. So then our paths divided. So the mainstream students went to mainstream schools, and special education students from my village school went to special education schools and live in dormitories there. But the system has changed since in Finland. that kind of dormitory doesn't exist anymore. Schools are close to the students. We have been building more schools, and also the roads are better. And so we are able to arrange transportation for all students, even long distance students. The cars are better, roads are better, so the trip to schools is much faster. And also, because we have been moving towards inclusive education system, we have abandoned most of the special education schools, and also the special education students are learning in inclusive environments. So this is kind of the background where I have been growing and working. But I would like to say a few words about yesterday, because that was very interesting for me to listen. And I think that you heard a lot of good kind of examples, what is important when you are working with the special education students or children with disabilities. And Dr. Hanani opened the session by saying that it is important that you as participant, after the training, you share what you have learned with others in your schools and in your communities. And I think that that is something that is not only for this training, but it's for all the kind of education related cooperative way of working. So it is important to share with each other what we have learned, what we have experienced, what we know. And then Ms. Wenningsi talked a lot about important issues that I will be talking also from my point of view today and tomorrow. But she talked a lot with you about the students' needs and what are their needs. And she highlighted that it is important to focus on what the students can do and where their strengths of the students are. So concentrating on the positives. Of course, we need to look at the negatives as well, but we should concentrate to the positive things. And she mentioned that the happy, healthy life is what we are expecting our children to have. We want them to have a meaningful life. And that is what we want for all the children, regardless if they are disabled or not. And she talked about importance of finding a way to communicate with others, build relationships. And I think it is a key part of being a human and being a person and being kind of a part of community, to be able to communicate. And as a teacher, especially with the special education or disabled students, one of the main issues for us is to support them in their communication. And then we've talked about student challenges, and Ms. Wenningsi mentioned very clearly that all students are different, and there are so many different disabilities or needs for support, and that is why it is important for us to look the broad picture and try to find different combinations of teaching and learning strategies and methods. And she also mentioned that we need to give our students possibilities to try different things and encourage them to experience and experiment. Then she talked about difficulties about choosing the right curriculum, and we will be discussing about the curricular issues in my sessions also. And she mentioned that the integrated curriculum is very useful with special education and disabled students, and I totally agree with her. And then you had the group work and a very good, lively discussion. I really enjoyed listening to the outcomes from your group work. So today and tomorrow, I try to bring new things to the table and maybe a different, more angles. And I will be talking about issues that are both a kind of a detailed, but also the kind of umbrella issues. And I try to kind of keep in mind the visual impairment, but also the kinds of other disabilities, because many children with visual impairments also have other disabilities. So it is not common only to have one disability. It's usually a combination of multiple disabilities. And then I will be talking about school level issues, maybe even policy level issues. And then when these 2 days, I would like you to keep in mind that there are different levels of disability. Some children's disabilities are very severe and some are quite mild, and there's everything between. And then I want you to keep in mind that many of the disabilities overlapped, as I just mentioned. And with these slides that I am using today, I have been collecting quite a lot text and information, but I am not intending to go all of them through because I would like to also share some stories. But these PowerPoint slides are just for you, so you can later kind of look them more carefully if you wish to do so. So kind of additional materials for your use if you want to use them. And then I totally understand that every country, every school, and every student have a different situation. Countries have different curriculums, they have different education systems. So there is no such thing as one size good example or one way to go, but there are multiple. So the things I will be talking to you are examples and experiences. And then I hope that you will kind of take the idea and think that how this idea could be used in my own environment, in my school, in my classroom, with my students. And then I would also like you to keep in mind that not all disabilities are visible. From some students, we can see that they are disabled, but from some students, we cannot. And then I will tell you more about the working methods when we go along, but this morning I will be doing some presentations, and when we will go through your questions and comments, and that would be the thing that we will be doing until 12 o'clock today. And then we will look again what we will be doing in the afternoon. And I would like to start with this picture. And I would like you to take a look of it, and you don't need to answer me, but I would like you to think that what is this picture all about? What is that in the picture? And I will tell you the background of the picture. This is one of my favorite pictures, and I will tell you soon why. This picture is taken by my son. I have one son, and he is now 24 years old, and he is studying in Finland. But when he was a child and lived with me and his father, and we traveled quite a bit. And it was one of our travels when he was 7 years old. So it's a long time ago. He was 7. We went to a place and he was very bored. He was so bored. He had nothing to do and he wanted to kind of, he asked me that, what can I do? I can't just sit here. It's so boring. And I gave him a digital camera so he could take pictures, because at that time we didn't have these kind of cell phones that you can take pictures, but we had digital cameras, and I gave him the camera so he can take pictures, because then you can delete the pictures and it's not a big thing, just take pictures. And then afterwards I looked at the pictures that he had taken, and this was one of the pictures that he took. And I had to ask him that, what is this in the picture? And then he explained, it is a fork. We were eating in a restaurant. He was sitting at the table and he took a picture of the fork before he started to eat. And then when he told me that it's a fork, I can see it now because he explained it to me. But I understood something very important when working with disability students or with the development in education, is that we need to look at things from different perspectives, different angles, and we need to keep in mind that people see things differently. So something that I see is not necessarily what somebody else is seeing. So I need to understand that there are different kind of perspectives, new angles. And of course, when we talk about the disabled students, like with visual impairments, they also have the kind of the actual visual surroundings look different to them as it does for us. But this is just to give you the kind of a background that I'm always keeping in my head. Use different angles and understand that not all people see things the same. So this picture is Finland is an agricultural country also, and we have short summers, but we grow some grain. So this is a picture in August with farmers on the field. And the inclusive education is a term that we use a lot, but I would like to spend a little bit time on explaining what inclusive education means for most and what it means for me. First of all, it is so essential for us, the issue that every pupil is unique and everyone has a right for high quality education. Of course, we understand that. We are special education teachers, we understand that, but that is not the case with everybody. So we need to remind this for everyone when we talk about education. And then I like the picture here, and it shows kind of how our thinking has evolved during time. When we started, maybe if we look back 100 years ago, our society was very exclusive, especially when we think about education. It was exclusive education, where people were thinking 100 years ago that if people is disabled, they do not need to go to school even. So they were left outside the education system. And of course, not all the people in society, they didn't even the non-disabled didn't go to school, because schooling was only for a few. But then when people started to go to school, when we moved ahead, then we started to provide education services for people, and then we developed this kind of segregated system where we had the mainstream education services, and then we had the segregated education services for disabled persons. And that is now I don't think, I hope that there is no country today anymore that has the exclusiveness as a policy kind of a method. I believe that now we are in a different steps on segregated, integration or inclusive stages. So in some countries, the schooling system is that we have mainstream schools and we have special education schools. And in some countries, we have a system where we have schools with all children studying in the same school, but in different classrooms. And then we have inclusive systems where all the students are studying in the same classrooms, and the support is provided to them in that classroom. So now we are in different places in different countries. But what inclusiveness means is that we need to offer equal opportunities for all. And we need to offer same possibilities for learning. And we also, inclusiveness means that we need to be learning alongside. So we would need to be learning together. And we kind of think from inclusiveness point of view that the student who needs a support doesn't need to go and find the support, but instead the support services would come to the student. But that is also tied to a little bit a different attitude that we are talking in societies as well. It's all the inclusive education thinking is tied to a rights-based services system. So in many countries, luckily, we now think that the individuals in our society have rights for certain services, and education is one of them. So most of the countries globally have been now translating these principles to their education systems. But like I mentioned, we are in different places because we have different history, different culture, and also kind of different goals in our education system. And it's okay. We do not need to be the same. We can be different. But I think that most of the countries are, however, trying to develop their education system to be more inclusive systems. But when we talk about the inclusiveness, we have vulnerable groups that are in a risk still of leaving behind or dropping out. And these groups often also lack the same opportunities than the others, and they also underperform academically. And these groups, of course, we know who they are. They are the people with disabilities, or they come from social groups that are more difficult to have the education than the others. But we lose a lot of human capital in our nations if we do not include everybody in education, because most of the people they have capacities and they have skills. We just need to find the skills and support that skills development, and also then find a place for them in a society where they can kind of be involved and bring their part to the whole society. So inclusive education is more than just getting children to go to school. That is not enough, because we need to do something inside the school to help the students really learn. And World Bank has put together a framework for inclusive education that can be used with all the students in our education systems. And there are 7 principles that should be kept in mind when we are making planning the education in our schools. And first principle is participations. So we should be working together, communicate with each other, consult the stakeholders, and do the planning together, not just the education people, but with everybody, to hear and listen, parents, students. Then there is accessibility. So education has to be accessible to everyone. And this means the buildings, information, communication, curriculum, materials, teaching methods, language, support services, and so on. Then availability is the third one. So there had to be enough places in schools for everybody. And then we need to accommodate the individual needs of the students to the services available. So for example, the disabled students had education services close to their home, so they didn't need to travel long distances to find the services that are suitable for them. Then we need to make the learning environment accessible to accept the students. So this is something that the structure, content, and methods we use need to be relevant to the learners, and also the programs, curricula, facilities, instruction, they should reflect the practices and values of the community. And then adaptability means that everything that we use, the methods and tools, need to be flexible, and they need to respond to student needs. And we know this. This is not new for us. The special education teachers know this very well. And then there is safety. And we need to make sure that the learning environments are safe. And of course, that means that there are nothing that they will be physically harmed. But this also means that our disabled students are safe from violence, harassment, or abuse, or bullying, because that is something that they are facing many times, but we need to fight against that. And then we need to have an education system that is response to the gender and age needs, for example, but also kind of we need to have this responsiveness in our system so we can really understand that we all are different. But then when we try to look, especially the special education needs or the disabled students, that there are a few things that are important for us to keep in mind when we are planning our kind of teaching in our classroom, and how we are planning our work in our own school, and how we are integrating, how we are discussing with parents and other stakeholders that are close to our work. And first is building the common understanding. And there are a lot of negative attitudes towards disabled people or students in some communities. So, and there are also, I have heard and I also have noticed that some teachers are not very responsive to teach students who have learning needs or disabilities. And many of those attitudes come from bad experiences or not knowing what to do. Because many teachers, if they are scared, they don't know what to do. They feel that they have no skills or capacity to teach students who have some learning needs. Then they might develop an attitude that I don't want to teach them. I don't want them to be in my class or in my school. So one thing we need to be doing is changing attitudes. And we can do that by bringing knowledge and understanding to people. And the more knowledge and understanding we have, the more we can kind of change the attitudes towards disabilities. And then a second example could be the importance of the pedagogies and learning methods that we use in schools. And this is not only for disabled, this is for everybody. In order for us to be able to address individual needs of the students, we need to be using flexible methods. And we need to move away from rote learning and have a more emphasis on hands-on, experience-based, active, and cooperative learning. Not only in special education classes, but in all classes, because I know that even in mainstream classrooms, there are students who are struggling with their learning. So this is also beneficial for them to create a teaching and learning culture where we use flexible teaching and learning methods. Then we need to be shifting towards inclusive mainstreaming. And there has been a lot of discussion that should we have kind of a special schools or a special classes, kind of a segregative solutions, or should we have kind of totally inclusive classrooms? And there are pros and cons that have been in discussion. And many times when we argue that separate settings for special education students are needed, we are talking about that the special education and disabled students need full-time specialized support. And also it has been mentioned that the student teacher ratios are lower in special education classes and schools, so there's class sizes are smaller, and also that the teachers are specialized in special education schools and classes to teach special education students. But there are also downsides in these segregated environments, because sometimes these separate settings lead to lower academic expectations for students, and the special education students may also lack interaction with other students and the kind of a mainstream society. Or the segregation makes the transition to mainstream schools or to the working life or being adult in our society more difficult or socio-emotionally challenging if they have been studying in a segregated system for a long time. So countries have tried globally to kind of make education system where this specialized support and the low student-teacher ratios and specialized teachers are brought to the mainstream schools. So everybody could be learning in the same school and all the support would be brought to that school. But there are different policies, different strategies, and we are in different places. So I'm not saying that what would be the thing to do for you, your country or school, but this is just what's going on. So we are moving. This is a journey. Then we are balancing between defining and labeling students. And we all understand that early identification of special needs is needed. We need to know early enough if children are in need of support. So we then usually want to have some kind of diagnosis to our students. But the problem with the diagnosis is that if we try to diagnose a child when they are very young, then they might be a situation where the children are developing very rapidly when they are young, and some develop very fast and some very slowly. So we do not know what is something that the child will catch up when they get older, and what is the disability that is there to stay and what we should address. The other thing is that children develop their skills in different ages. Some children, for example, learn how to read when they are 3, and some when they are 7. And still there is no kind of a disability there. They just are developing the skills in different schedule that is kind of their own timetable, how to learn. So then if we do a diagnosis for a child when they are 3, we actually probably do not know yet what is the situation. Of course, there are disabilities that we do know. If the child cannot see, that is a disability that we know. But there also are some disabilities that are perfectly kind of a child that with no special need at all when they are a child, they get a sort of some kind of disability later in life. So we need to keep very close eye in all of our students in all ages, because disabilities may occur also later in children's lives. And then many education systems, the disabled students need more resources. And in many systems, the resources are tied to the diagnosis. But then we do have a problem that if the child does not have a diagnosis, the child do not get support. So the countries have been trying to develop a system where the diagnosis is not needed for this additional support. But the support can be provided to a child unless the diagnosis. So the diagnosis is to bring more information to the teacher, but the diagnosis is not needed to get the support the child needs. So this is a big change in many countries. And then one more slide before we go to the discussion is that then, of course, we need to invest on building capacity between school personnel. And we are special education experts, but we believe that every teacher should have some kind of knowledge about supporting students. So there should be in initial teacher training, there should be courses about how to teach and how to support children with needs. And then we also need to add teachers' capacity during their whole working career. So the continuous professional development is needed. And as education teachers, we know And also our aids and tools and systems, they develop so rapidly. Technology goes on, our health system goes on. We are able to kind of help many disabled students with their hearing or seeing, with kind of additional support. We can have kind of different types of operations where we can increase the seeing ability or hearing ability, or we can have some kind of a digital or technical tools to support. So we as teachers, we need to keep up our knowledge all the time. So we need training all the time. And then we need to customize our teaching and learning practices, and we will be talking about that later, so I don't say more about this now. And then we need to support the families and engage them, because especially when we talk about the disabled students, it is work that we do with the parents and with the families, how to kind of support the families to support their children's growth. So this all needs to be written in our documents, our policy documents. We have legislations and we have other national level guiding documents like strategies and curriculums, but we really need to have these important things about supporting disabled students to be written in our policy documents. So that is important. And then, of course, we have been having these school closures because of the COVID, and we know that the special education and disabled students in many places have been in many disfortunate situations because many of them didn't have access to education because of their disability or lack of communication skills to interact online. So now when the schools are reopening, we need to be paying a special interest on our disabled students and how to support them in their learning, how to support the parents, how are we gonna be able to kind of bridge the gap that has been there in their development during the school closes, if there is such a thing exists, and how we can identify the kind of individual needs of each student and the kind of learning loss that they might be having. So at this point, I would like to see if you have any kind of questions or comments. And there is, yeah, okay, I can see that you know that it's a fork and a tool and a spoon. Yeah. Yeah. And there is a question that how old I am now. I am 53. So I'm 53 years old, and I started to work as a special education teacher when I was 20. I just turned 24. So that makes almost 30 years. And then there is a comment that we have a similar working experience. Yes, once working in standard chartered and now in special education. Yes, I think that many of us have the similar paths, especially people who become principals or leaders. I would highly recommend that those people have a teacher background, because then they would know how to kind of support the teachers and students in their work. So would you have some comments or questions? Oh, how hard was PhD? Yeah, well, it was hard. I like studying. It's kind of my hobby. So I have been working and studying whole of my life at the same time. So I got interested in doing my PhD 2014. And then I started to kind of make a plan about my research, and I contacted the University of Helsinki in Finland, and they accepted me to be a student. But I must say that it was not easy work at the ministry and study at the university, my PhD at the same time. So from year 2014 until the year 2020, when I got my PhD papers out from the university, I had no free time at all. I was working, and then whenever, in all the evenings, all the weekends, all the leave from my work, I did my PhD thesis. So in practice, no free time, but it was all worth it. And I was lucky because the work I was doing at the ministry supported my PhD thesis theme. And what I did for my PhD supported my work at the ministry. So the topic was so close to my work, so I could kind of use the information I gained in my work to my thesis, and what I did for my thesis to my work, but not easy. Most of the people take leave from their work to do their PhD, but I didn't want to do that, so I chose the hard road. And then there is what can we do as a teacher if family student doesn't give their support for our learning plan for their child? Yeah, we have that situation. I had that situation many times in my classroom, that the students' parents didn't agree with me what I saw as a teacher. And in Finland, we have the type of attitude, and I also am supporting that attitude, that pretty much everything, the main big decisions that we do in school need to be approved by the parents. So what is useful in my experience is that we need to start the planning of the support measures with the parents. Because when the parents are involved already at the beginning, then they feel that they are included to the process. So it helps us to kind of introduce the working methods that we need to be using, because the parents are there to plan from the scratch. But if we already have a ready plan, and when we introduce that to the parents, many parents say that, no, not going to happen. We are not agreeing. We want to change this. So planning with the parents from the scratch, that is one thing. And the second thing is that if there is some very big issue, for example, if the student, example that in Finland happened many times, the student is learning in a mainstream classroom, but then we see that even if we try all the support we can offer, and that is still not working, and the child should be transferred to a smaller class, like a special education class for a while, and the parents are against it, we cannot do the change because the parents don't approve. So then we just need to talk with the parents again and again and again, and explain and give examples, and kind of get the parents to accept the situation with the child. Because many times parents are just scared and they are not accepting the changes, and they are that is why they are against the changes. So, but then the third thing is that there are some things that are very important for the student and they need to be done. And if the parents are against, then we can turn to other kind of sectors in society. We can turn to health specialist or a social specialist and try to get their support so they could work with the parents and kind of talk to the parents so the parents would understand that this really is needed. So maybe these three things, working with the parents. And then how to encourage the parents to do something by themselves. That would be so important. Many times when I have been in this situation, I have noticed that parents don't want to do something with the child, is that they don't know what and how. So we need to be so, give the parents so good advice, simple advice, so the parents really know what they are expected to do and how. And then the parents also need to know why this is important. So we need to explain the parents that this is, you should be doing this because it's so important for us to be able to do something, to explain how and why. Then Reni from Indonesia confused it with adaptable curriculum and how to make a curriculum suitable for inclusive class. Yes, I will have a whole sector about this. If it's okay with you, Reni, that we discuss that later, because then I will explain it from the scratch. I hope that is okay with you. And then confused about finding information related to the inclusive school curriculum, good source of information, reference material. Yeah, if we talk about that, yes, let's talk about that as a whole individual topic later. I will try to support you on that. And some students with learning disabilities may experience some difficulties among normal students. Yes, they may be depressed or may get minor injuries. How should we motivate them? Yeah, okay. First, when the child grows up in inclusive environment, the child with disabilities learn how to kind of live their lives in that environment. If child first is kind of taking to a special arrangements or special surroundings and then returned to the mainstream environment, then the problems are bigger than the students that have been growing up in the mainstream environment. Because when the child is growing up, they learn new things every day, every month, every minute. So they learn how to be part of that environment. But of course, we need to support them how to kind of be part of that environment. So we need to make sure that they know how to conquer their disability. They need to learn tricks, individual tricks, what work for them. And they also need to learn how to communicate with others. But that is not only the responsibility of that disabled student, because there is a learning lesson here. Our mainstream students need to be taught also to communicate and interact with people with disabilities. So I think that we here are also teaching all of our children and youth to be in relationship with all kinds of people. Some people may have disabilities, some people may not, and the people who have disabilities, they have different kind of obstacles. So if I happen to be a child that I have no disability, then I need to learn that it is my responsibility to understand that not everybody is the same, And it is my job to keep the people who do not have a kind of, if they can't see, it is my responsibility to help them, support them, warn them. Like we know as adults that if we have a family member that cannot see, of course we are helping them out in the things that they cannot do. So we need to learn that to our children already in early age. And in inclusive environments, they hopefully will learn that. So depression is it's tough one, because then we should offer our disabled students the kind of experiences that they are accepted and they are capable and they are able to do things. So if they all the time get the discouraging messages that they are not good enough or they can't do something or they are not accepted, then they probably will get depressed. But we need to build a school environment where everyone is accepted and everyone has a right to be as they are. We all are different, and we need to build the school culture and environment to support everybody's learning, but it is not easy. And then are there some children who cannot be included in inclusive setting? I would say that no. And I explain that. I would see that inclusive setting is one campus, one school campus. And in that school campus, there are kind of support services for all students. And there are disabilities that are very severe, like a very severe mental disorders and very severe kind of developmental disorders that need kind of a full-time assistance, and where the students are not really learning any academic skills, and they are mostly learning life skills and communication skills and kind of everyday life skills. And then it is more than appropriate that those students have their own classes and own classrooms and own teachers and own assistants. But there is no reason why these students should be studying in a different environment, in different school building or a different kind of a city. And so it can be kind of, at least it can be, we can try to build a system where everybody would be in the same environment. So for example, our mainstream students would see that there are children with disabilities and there are people who need support. And then, for example, when we have a celebration, we may have national holidays or ending of the school year celebrations or whatever there are cultural celebrations in school environment, then we can all come together, the disabled and the mainstream and everybody. Then we could kind of have the joint celebration, joint activity. And in Finland, does the special needs students study in the same class with other children, or do they have own classes? Yes, most of the children in Finland study in same classes with other students, but not without support. And we will be talking about this support later. I will explain more about it. But yes, in Finland, students are studying in same classes, most of them. But these children who are very severely disabled, they study in their own classes, but in the same school building with others and participate in those same events and things like that. And then how to make mainstream teachers accept disability students to learn together with typical students, inclusive classes. mainstream teachers think that they need to be using another teaching strategies when they teach disability students. Yeah, this is I think this is the main problem to solve. And there are a few things that this doesn't happen fast. This is very slow process, but it can be started. And first of all, I would hope that all the mainstream teachers would have some special education courses when they go to teacher training, because then they would start to understand a little bit about the disability learning and special needs teaching and learning. Then secondly, it would be very important that the teachers would not be stuck in one teaching method. Because if they are using only one method that maybe the mainstream students can follow, then that is not working for inclusive classrooms. Because in inclusive classrooms, you will need to have different methods, different pedagogies, individualized learning. So teachers should be willing to use different methods, even with the mainstream students, because even mainstream students are different and they learn differently. So different pedagogies would be beneficial for them also. So then if the teacher already was using very different types of learning methods, then if a special education or disabled student came to this classroom, it wouldn't be that difficult because the teacher already had a tradition to do things differently. But then again, teachers need continuous professional development to do so, and that cannot be done alone. So I would strongly advise that teachers would be working together, kind of putting their heads together in planning and also implementing the teaching. So you can kind of put teaching groups together, and there can be 2 groups of students and 2 teachers, and they can teach together, and then they can regroup the students. So one teacher could be teaching the students who are struggling, and the other teacher could be teaching the students that already kind of understand that topic, or whatever types of arrangements they could be doing in the classroom, the 2 teachers. But if you are there alone, then at least you could have some kind of assistant teachers, or then you could have a teaching method that some students could be doing individual working or kind of quiet working, and then you as a teacher could be working with other group of students, explaining them how things are done, kind of doing different things in a classroom at one time. But it takes kind of a knowledge from the teacher what can be done, and then courage also to start trying to do the new things. And then the other thing is how to make the mainstream teacher to accept the disability student to learn together. Yeah, and that is tough. I totally understand that. And then I'll go back what I said earlier about because many times acceptance comes from understanding. So when you understand the thing, then it's easier for you to accept that. And then we should kind of support our mainstream teachers to develop their thinking, give their new tools, new ideas, and kind of help them to get started. Because many times acceptance comes only when you are willing to change. And then how to bring people to this place where they are willing to change, that is difficult. So what have been used in Finland is that when we started to really push for the inclusive education in 1990s, then we started to work with the teachers who were interested in inclusive education. We started to pilot with the teachers who wanted to try and who wanted to do the change. So we didn't say that everybody should be doing that at the moment, but we started with the teachers who were the first ones, the pilots, and with very small steps, do something very small thing. And then when they gained experience, they gained also kind of they were encouraged to do more. And then when other teachers started to see what some of the pilot teachers were doing, then they started to ask that, what are you doing and why are you doing? And could we be trying this together? And could I be working with you? And could you help me? And then it started to spread inside the school. So one or two pilot teachers kind of helped then the other teachers in the school to change their methods as well. And then what is the difference between integration and inclusion? Yes, yeah, okay. It took me a while to kind of clear this in my head. So let's say that this is my air conditioning control. Okay, let's pretend that this is a special education student or disabled student. And then now we know that this disabled student needs support. So then we take this special education student outside from our mainstream system. So we take the children out of the system, for example, to a special education school or different school or a special education class. And then we notice that, oh, wow, it would be good to integrate the student with the peers. So then we start to think that maybe that student could attend a music class or physical education class or maybe history class. And then we integrate the student to the mainstream students in history class or physical education class. And then he goes back to the kind of segregated solution. So this is integration. But then inclusive education is that when we notice that the student has needs or is disabled, we never take the child away. The child stays there in the same place where the child was, in the normal environment, mainstream services. And then we start bringing all the services to the child in these surroundings. It may be a speech therapy or some aids or different learning materials or different curriculum goals or whatever would be there. So that is the, in integration, is first the step to taking out and then integrating back in, but in inclusive education, you do not go anywhere in the first place. I hope that explained it a little bit. And then what should teacher do when we see potential that our student can go for inclusive, but the student itself doesn't want to go? Yeah. So maybe we could start with that first step with the integrating. So maybe ask the student, because most of the students have some strength, even if they have a lot of kind of problems in schooling, they might have something that they are good with, and that maybe start with that. So take the student with disabilities to the mainstream students, for example, for a music lesson or after school activities or kind of some national holiday celebration party. So start very small. And when the student then gets positive encouragement, then we can maybe try to do that more often. So kind of learn from there. So there are more issues here, and I will go through of them, but maybe I now at this point continue a little bit the next topic to give some new ideas, but please keep putting in the questions or comments. Okay, can you now see a different slide? Yeah, hopefully so. So when we then talk about the teaching strategies and pedagogies, you talked a lot about that yesterday. So I will just maybe highlight a few things about it, because this is only a few things. We need to be talking about how we plan the training, what is the pedagogy, how is the leadership supporting, what is the role of teachers, do the teachers have any autonomy so they can really have the inclusive way of teaching method. Teachers need to be resilient, they need to be accepted changes, they need to have figure out what tools to use, what cooperation we are doing, how do we develop our work, and then get some feedback. But we need to also understand that learning is very, very wide thing. It's not only remembering the academic things, but it's doing, thinking, planning, investigating, evaluating. Learning is targeted, diverse. It also tied to the subject matter or time and place, and it is lifelong. So when we talk about working culture and pedagogy and teaching methods in schools nowadays, and when we are trying to develop our system, we need to understand that the role of the teachers is changing. And alongside with the teaching, we need to be guiding and supporting the learning process also. And we need to be very learner-centered. And we need to support the activity and enthusiasm and interest and motivation of our students. And we should be using more projects, and we need to have different tools for learning and problem solving, and we need to figure out that what might those tools be. We will be talking about that too later. And then the importance of cooperation and interaction. And also the teachers' roles are changing, not only with special education teachers, but for all teachers. So teachers' role is changing from teaching to guiding and supporting the learning process. And that is particularly important when we are talking about the students with disabilities. So we need to focus on learners and support their activity and all the natural interests and strengths and their motivations. And then the teachers' cooperation is the key here, because if we do this alone, it is a lonely job and it is a hard job. So please cooperate. So it needs to be organized in the school levels that the teachers can work together and they can share the workload if possible to help each other to achieve both the education goals of the school and also the individual goals of the students. And then when we talk about the cooperation, we talk about the multi-professional cooperation between adults. So have kind of an adult community. And that the ways how that can be done is, for example, working in pairs, teacher with a teacher or many teachers as a group, or have some mentoring programs, or use networks, different people. And then we need to be using the right methods that are suitable for our students. And teachers need to know their students. If they don't know the students, they cannot choose the right methods, because the teachers need to know their students' support needs and interests and strengths and working methods and previous experiences and feelings. And then teachers need to build kind of connections between different subjects. And you talked about that yesterday. You have a group work about it. So how you can kind of have one project, and then you are learning different subjects and topics when you are doing the one program, for example. And that is calling the integrative instruction. And then the techniques also must be multiple. And then when we talk about the cooperation and interaction, it's not only teachers. We also need to be kind of connecting with our students, with other students. And we as teachers need to be working with all the adults in children's lives, our students' life. We need to pay attention to learning environments and the communities that the children, our students, are living in. And also the roles of the student are changing. The disabled students' roles are really something that we need to focus on, the learner's active role. There are different levels. Not all disabled students can set their own targets or reflect or analyze, but they can do something, and they need to be learning to do something to be active. Of course, in their own kind of limits. Then the students need to be very interactive, because that is a skill they need in life afterward. They need to reach some level of independency, and they need to be doing that together with other people in different environments, and they need to understand consequences. Then students need to learn how to learn, because they need, we as people, we need to be learning new things all the time. So we need to learn how I am learning. And when disabled students are our target audience, then it is especially important for them, because they have restrictions in their learning. So they need to learn how to kind of go around the restrictions, or how to kind of use some other techniques that because not all the techniques are suitable for them. They need to be learning what is the technique and tool suitable for myself. And then they need to have a self-conception and self-confidence. They need to be confident about themselves and their skills. They need to feel good, feel joy. And that is a kind of a whole school approach. The continuum that starts from early childhood education and lasts for a lifetime. And we want to prevent as much as possible. We want to prevent things happening. But sometimes it can't be done. But then we need to identify the need for support as early as possible, so the problem doesn't get too big. And then we need to have an early intervention. We need to offer support and guidance, and that support and guidance needs to be available for everybody. And we also as teachers need to offer the support. So we cannot think that parents would know or students would know what kind of support is available. But we as teachers need to tell the parents and tell the students that these are the options for you to get the support. And then the flexibility and cooperation has been discussed already many times. But then when we talk about the students with visual impairments, we are talking a few specific topics. We are talking about the safe physical environments, kind of the different classroom settings, and not to be harmed, not to be bumped into sharp objects or fell into holes or things like that. Then we need to have a specific learning materials that are suitable for visual impairment students. Then they need to be able to move around. So if there is only instructions giving in a kind of signs, it's not working very well for visual impairment children. And then the interior choices, how the light goes and colors reflect, and what is the audio kind of atmosphere in a classroom. Is there too much noise or things like that? You talked about it already yesterday, but these are really important to kind of think in the classroom and school level, that how can the child with a visual impairment really kind of go around in the environment. Because if this environment is very difficult for the student, then they get kind of anxious, nervous, and maybe even depressed, because they don't know how to move around. And if we can support, make their life kind of easier in the surroundings, then we can focus more on the actual kind of teaching and learning process. And then we could go and see a couple of more of your comments here. And there is mainstream teachers are sometimes uncomfortable when resource teachers come in to help special needs students in their classroom. Yes, that is so true. And I would say that many times this uncomfortable feeling comes because the teachers are not used to that, the mainstream teachers. So it's so rare that the resource teacher comes, so they are not used to it. So I would just encourage you to keep on doing that. And if there would be possibilities for to add the resource teachers, it would be good. So just kind of keep on doing that, and teachers, the mainstream teachers, they will learn. But that shouldn't affect the students. So if the teacher is uncomfortable, students shouldn't notice that, because it is not good for students to see that they are not accepted by the teacher. So if there is some uncomfortableness amongst the teachers, those should be kind of resolved before going to the classroom. So the mainstream teachers and the resource teachers should have a time to sit down, have discussions, and plan what they are going to do, and plan the kind of structure and tasks for that the class, and what they are intending to do in the classroom. So then when they go to the classroom, both teachers, the mainstream teacher and the resource teacher, would know their role and what they will be doing in the classroom. And then after the teaching session, have a discussion, just two of them, to reflect and decide how to move on and what to do next, how to be better. But uncomfortableness and attitude, they change only through getting more knowledge, getting experience, and getting the courage. And then students who are learning in inclusive learning school, they are in trouble with some subjects because they don't know how to learn the heart of the subject. So the cleverest in normal schools, how should we solve these problems? Yes, first, there are many things you can do. First, if you are very advanced, then the teacher in the classroom can use individualized kind of methods. So the teacher can give each student tasks on different levels. So some students can have very difficult tasks, and some students can have very basic tasks. But of course, that is only if the teacher already knows a lot about the inclusive education. But also can be done that this resource teacher comes to the classroom. So when the teacher is teaching the classroom, the resource teacher is supporting the students who are struggling. So this resource teacher then helps the struggling students with the details and how to go along. And then there is also a third option. Then, for example, if a student is very good in most of the subjects, but very poor, for example, in mathematics, then the students can leave the mainstream class during the math class and go and study mathematics in small class, in special education setting, and perhaps even with the special education teachers. So there are different levels you can do. And or you can also combine all of these. For example, when I was working as a special education I was working as a resource teacher. I did different things. I guided teachers before the classrooms, what they could be done differently. And then the teachers, the mainstream teachers, did that in their classrooms, gave different tasks for different students. I also went to the class and we were teaching together with the mainstream teacher. I had one or two students that I know that are struggling. I was sitting next to those students and I helped them with their learning. And then there were also classes where I just took those one or two, when I know that there was a class that they were really gonna learn new thing, I took those two students and we went to a separate room and I was teaching them privately. And then we returned to the mainstream class. So combining these issues can be done. And you can also figure out the methods that are working for you, because there is no one thing fits all method. Be innovative and try to innovate new methods that could be used for your students. And what is the criteria of students who are eligible for enter inclusive schools? Are students with disabilities, for example, blind students who are also having learning difficulties as well as behavioral problems? Yeah. I would say that all students are eligible for inclusive education if that is the best interest of the student. So the focus here should be on the students and what is best for that student. And then we start planning what is best for him or her. And if it's best for the student to be in that inclusive environment and with all the support, we cannot forget that. The student needs to have the support. If there is no support, then that is not an inclusive education. That is just abandoning a child. But if the support is there, can be available, and the child is benefiting from that, then yes, we need to do that. But if that is not good for the child, then we shouldn't do that. But we cannot say that it is best for me as a teacher to do things like that, and that's why student needs to go somewhere. We cannot say that. We cannot have the decision. We cannot make the decision on the basis on what is best for me as a teacher. It needs to be done what's best for the student. And then there is no one good way. But if we think that the inclusive school is a school that has also the special education classes inside the school, then I would say that inclusive surroundings is for all. But then we need to decide that is the right place for the student in the mainstream class with the support system, or is it in the special education class with the support available all the time and the full support available all the time. Then you are saying that students, if they are studying in the mainstream classes, the students who are not able to learn well need to be in resource classes or special education schools to be taught by special education teachers. Yeah, so this is what I want to highlight now, is that the special education teachers and their support can be brought to the mainstream schools. So these two school types can be put together and then kind of use all those resources together. So there wouldn't be special school with special education resources and mainstream schools with mainstream resources, but all the schools and resources together, and then kind of make a combination that is best for each student. But it is not easy. That's not easily done. I tell you that. But then if we had all the resources in one campus area, then we could plan for each student that if that student would be in the special education class all the time, mainstream class all the time, or combination of both, kind of studying both in mainstream class, some classes, and in special class, some classes. And in addition, they could be having these individual classes with the special education resource teacher also. Kind of, but it's a kind of making a puzzle, kind of putting bits and pieces together, and it requires a lot of planning, and it is a tough job, but it is a possibility, and I think that we are moving towards that model. But please give yourselves some time, but you can start thinking that if some steps could be taken already in your kind of environment. And what do we do in Finland to make the teachers accept the students in open arms? Well, first of all, that is required from them. So that is, first of all, we do not give them an option. They need to be doing that. So it's kind of, we are not going to ask them that, are you willing? We just say that you need to. Nowadays, we didn't when we started that in the 1990s. At that time, we, like I mentioned to you, that we started with the pilot teachers, the ones who were willing, and then it started to spread from there. But now when we have a new curriculum, we started to use that in 2014. And we did all the legislative changes that our education system is based on inclusive education. Teachers do not have the choice anymore. They need to do that. So they cannot say that I'm not willing to do so. Of course, there are teachers who are better in it and teachers who are not very good, but we need then to support the teachers who are not very good. So they need to get training and experience and support from other teachers. And then could you please share one program that you conduct which includes the children in special needs with normal students? Okay, yeah, let me, yes, when I was teaching a special education class, I had my own class. My children had a lot of disabilities, and they had so many disabilities that most of the time they couldn't study in the mainstream classes. So I had 10 students with different disabilities, and I had one teacher assistant who was supporting all the students. And then I had the second assistant who was supporting one child who had so many needs that that child needed an individual kind of assistant teacher. So it was 3 of us in our special education class, 10 students and 3 adults, and I was the teacher in that classroom. So then we decided with the physical education teacher in our school, the special education class was in the same building with other mainstream classes. So we decided with the mainstream education teacher that we will be starting to do the physical education and music classes together. So all the physical education and music classes was the mainstream class and the special education class, and we all came together. And we did everything together. The teachers, we did the planning together, and the students did all the kind of activities together. So then we had 2 teachers, and then we had the 2 assistants assisting all of us. And that worked very well. But then also I had student who was very clever in kind of history and geography and didn't need support at all in those subjects. So then we decided that whenever we had some history or geography lessons, that student would go to the same mainstream class that we had the physical education and music lessons with. So also the children would already know each other. So that a child from my special education class would sit with that class on the history and geography lessons. And then there was another child who was good in English language, surprisingly, yes, but still struggled. So that child went to the English class with that mainstream cooperation class, but with the support of the assistant. So I didn't send that child there alone, but the assistant teacher went with that student to take part of the English lesson. But then all the celebrations, the Christmas and spring parties and activity days and everything, we did all together with the mainstream students. So that is kind of my example on this. But I would like to now, before going to last questions, a few words about the materials and resources, and before we close for this morning. So we know that the support that the pupils get from us need to be flexible and planned with the long-term view in mind, not only for today, but for a long term. A day, a week, a month, a school year, a lifetime. And then we need to change those plans when the needs of the student change. So we cannot say that we did the planning in August and then we do not look at the changes, because we do need to look at that. And we need to be using different forms of support, and the support, it changes. Some children need very short time support for some topic, and some students need support for a long amount of time, or even forever. And some support needs are very minor, some are very major, and then there might be one form of support or many forms of support. So it's a combination of all of these. And we all know that support needs to be provided as long as necessarily and in the appropriate level. And we also need to be looking at the individual level of the students and also the school level and the learning environment level. And when we choose the right materials and methods for our students, that is the tailoring job we need to be doing. So it needs to be tailored for each individual because of the needs are so different. So then the personalized approaches has to be there available. And teachers need to be kind of learning these new methods all the time, because the methods change also. And it is a job that we need to be doing all the time. So lifelong learners, teachers as well. But I think that we just need to kind of see that what is possible for us. So try first to use all the support that we can. For example, if the child benefits from glasses or contact lenses or magnifying glasses, we should have them. Or hearing aids or earmuffs or blind rods or special assistants or everything like that. We should ask for that support from our school or from the health system or from the parents or other actors in the society. It's different in each society where do we get these classes, for example. But for example, in Finland, you get the eyewear from the health system, and all the aids that you need for learning you get from the school. But in different countries, it's from the different level. So you need to just to figure out that where do you get the different aids that the children is needing. But then we need to be paying attention to the self-care assistance, speaking and communication assistance, helping with building friendships, and then also the kind of the mental assistance. How do we support our students so they can struggle with the anxieties, nervousness, and worriedness and depression? And that is difficult because there is no one thing that you can do that, because we just need to be very open-eyed with our students and try to figure out that why are they so nervous or worried, and then try to solve those issues. We need to support our students with their behavior and concentration, with their memory and with their learning. And we will be looking this a little bit more, but these are kind of the topics that we need to be looking at. But then when I talk to you that not all the needs of the students are kind of available or visible at the beginning. So there are changes that happen over time. So there are warning signs that we as a teacher need to be focusing on. And there are different warning signs. I will not be reading these to you, but you as a teacher need to be kind of focusing on the different types of behavior of the students to see if there is something going on that we need to be addressing. And because there might be that things are going to worse, but there are also possibilities that things are going for better because of our teaching and learning growth and support. So we don't want to support our students too much, because if we offer them to support with the things that they do not need the support, they just need to rely on adults, even in things that they really could be doing by themselves, because we want them to become independent in the things that they can be. Then we need to be doing adaptations in our classrooms, because our classrooms might not be suitable for our students. So we need to be looking at the places for the students. What's the best place for the student to sit, for example, in the classroom, so they can see and hear and move around? What is the lighting? And if we use the chalk on the chalkboard, can they see that? And if there is sensitivity for light, so where is the light coming from? Is there enough light? We need to make sure that the child knows the way around the school and the classroom without hurting him or herself. And then we, as a teacher, need to be supporting our pupils and students in everyday situations, but we also need to teach our children that the children need to be supporting other children as well. It is not only adults that are doing this. And then we need to be changing our teaching strategies. And there are a lot of kind of small detailed strategies that can be used. And you talked a lot about them yesterday, but this is just kind of putting together some of them. You can look at these later and kind of see that I know that you know these already, but it's good to be reminded every once in a while that am I using all of them? Because sometimes I noticed that I got used to using something that I felt comfortable with, but I need to remind that I cannot be using the methods and strategies that I feel comfortable. I need to be using many because my students are different. So I need to kind of stretch myself to go beyond my comfort level. And then we shouldn't be doing this all alone. We need a support from, and when we talk about special education and disabled students, I hope that you have a multi-professional support services that you can use. And many schools have a student welfare group that has people from different kind of service backgrounds. There might be us as special education teacher, but then we should have support from guidance counselors, school nurses, doctors, social workers, psychologists, because we as teachers, we are not experts on health issues or social kind of welfare issues. and issues of the family and their kind of income and how they can provide for their children, for example, nutritional issues. So we should have a multi-professional team working with us. And with the team, we should do planning for each child and coordinate our work. So we would, in school, we would know what they are doing at the health sector. And for example, the social sector would know what we are doing in school. So kind of discussion between all these professionals is very important when we are trying to build a system that is supportive for the disabled student, not only in school, but in life. And then we need to be working together with the parents, not only informing the parents, but also planning with the parents and supporting the parents to work with their child in the home environment. For example, evenings, weekends, and school vacation days. And then let's see, we have 1 minute, if there still would be. Yeah, we have a low vision student who just entered the visual impairment special education program. Vision is deterioration, yes. Limited time to learn Braille, yes. And resource teachers, we try our best to help him online learning, but do you think he still have to learn Braille for his vision? Yeah, that is not a question that you can answer yes or no. But I would say that learning Braille would be like learning a new language. And I think that every time we learn a new skill, it is beneficial for us. So I would say yes, it would be beneficial for that student to learn some Braille if there is a kind of time and if the child has the capacity to do so, because probably in work later in his or his life he would benefit on knowing the skill. But also we should support whatever, if there is any eye vision left, we also should support to use the skills that a student already has. So kind of using whatever skills can be used, but then also trying to learn the new skills needed. Combination of these two. There is a question, yes, as sometimes my vision impaired students do not have the spirit to be successful in academic field, as they think that with their disabilities and limitations, they can't go far in academic studies. And they do not put much effort to improve their intellectual skills like what we can see in normal children. So the question would be that how can I encourage and motivate my children that they also can be great and successful in academic topics? Yeah, that is so important. When I was working as a special education teacher, and of course it's a long time ago, 1990s already, but I think that this is something that I still think the same, is that when I looked at my children in the classroom with all the disabilities they had and all the problems that they had been facing already in their young lives and the many issues that I know that they will be having when they grow up, then I kind of saw that there are one thing that I should, as a teacher, be teaching them, and that is kind of to trust themselves, love themselves, be kind of kind to themselves, understand their own value, and understand that they are important and they are cared and they are entitled to education and everything else that the other kids are entitled for. And then after that, I wanted to teach them the academics and subjects and topics and issues that are kind of the traditional schooling. Because I found out it after a few years that if the child doesn't have the self-confidence and kind of appreciation of oneself, they do not have a real motivation to learn. But then where the motivation comes from, that is motivation to be learning and kind of this appreciation for myself and importance of myself and taking care of myself. It varies in different students. But I could say that there are maybe two roads, and one is individual and one is more kind of a policy or structural level issue. First of all, the individual level, usually young children have hopes and dreams for their future, and those hopes and dreams are, some of them are related to the work that they would like to be doing when they grow up, and then the second one is that what kind of life they would like to have. They would like to have a family, children, spouse, own house, own home, and hobbies. And then it depends on the disability level if either of the hopes and wishes is kind of a easy to achieve. So many disabled have lack of skills to be able to live in an independent life. And of course, if you are not able to live independently, then having a family and supporting your family is more challenging. But if your level of disability is mild, or if you have some problems with your movement, or if you are blind, you are fully capable of having all the career, the family, and everything, because the disabilities can be overcome. And I wouldn't say that all kinds of life, they are tailored for that person and their wishes. And many cases people understand that what are the restrictions or limitations, but also they know that if they have self-esteem, they know how to overcome them. So we as teachers, we should be able to show our students their future and show them what is possible. Maybe bring to them examples of people who have been succeeding, even if they have a similar type of disability that our children have. Maybe find a peer or somebody at the community that has been doing all kinds of things in their lives, even if they had some issues that they need to be paying a new additional focus on. And then also we should look the level in the society, that what is the type of, for example, education that our system is providing. In many countries, for example, the technical and vocational education and training that could be offering many good options for employment for our disabled students is not something that is very kind of appreciated sector, or it is something that people are not willing to use, and they only would like to see for the academical options on continuous development, and maybe trying to change the education system and options in the country so that there would be no dead ends in the system. So the choices that you are doing now in school, for example, because of you have a disability or limitation, wouldn't stop you on going further in your education if that at some point would become possible for you. So kind of keeping all the options open and keeping also the TVET track to be a very attractive option for a student, it would be encouraged. I would say that, for example, in Finland, 50% of our 16-year-olds, when they leave the comprehensive education, 50% go to academic field and 50% go to TVET training. And I would say that the students who have only some kind of physical disability, like they are using a wheelchair or they are blind or they have hearing issues, then they pretty much use 50-50, the TVET or the academic. And for the students who have some mental limitations, they tend to more often choose the TVET option. But everybody chooses something. So everyone in Finland is studying until they are 19. So we need to offer options for all kinds of students in our system. But of course, it's not up to you as a teacher. You cannot decide on that. But of course, you can bring up the importance that in your country, there would be options for all kinds of students to continue the training. So the students, when they come to school, to preschool, already from early age, they know that there are options when they grow up, even with their disability. But then that is probably not enough motivation for all, just to know that. And you as a teacher, I hope that you would have a support of a guidance counselor in your school, because they have a specific expertise on these topics that maybe you could consult or send the student to talk with to give some additional kind of views and options. But kind of bring to the child's life kind of exercises to visualize kind of dream boards, that what would you dream for your future and what would you like to see in the future, and then what would be the steps that would be needed for you to take to get that future that you are hoping. But it is not an easy question. Then there is question that if there is one subject that the child is studying in the special class and studying one subject in the mainstream class, so is that considered inclusive or not? I would say that yes, it is, because the intention and the kind of the ideology behind the arranging of the education is inclusive. And if the environment supports these inclusive options, then you could say that it is inclusive kind of education and environment. So if the environment allows you to use these inclusive options, and if they already are used, that is a very good starting point. Because, like I mentioned before, all the choices that you are making needs to be done in the best interest of the student. So in the inclusive environment, if the best interest is for the student to study in the special education class full-time, then that's best choice. But if there is any possibility to do some kind of joint activities with the mainstream classes, then please do so, because that's the spirit of the inclusiveness. Then what can be done to improve employment opportunities for children with disabilities? I don't know if your country there would be some kind of training programs after school, like we have this compulsory education path that lasts for a certain time. But I don't know if in your countries you after that would have kind of a training programs that would include the employment aspect. So for example, when the student would be studying some specific field of training at the same time, that could be done in cooperation with some companies. So then the companies would start to know these students and maybe offer them employment after the training session is over. Then one option could be that during the compulsory education period already, there could be some cooperation with the employment organizers or companies or fields of employment that the school could work with. So the students, as a part of their studies, they could go to the workplaces and get to know the workplaces and have some kind of a week or day or 2-week time when instead of coming to the school, they could go to the workplace and really kind of learn and practice their skills in actual working places. And of course, this is for the older students, not the younger ones. So that could probably lead to employment. And then I don't know if in your countries there are some kind of employment opportunities that are specifically tailored for disabled labor force, because many countries have that. So the jobs that then these tailored programs are offering are not that demanding. They are kind of the people who work in those programs, they are working, but they are just doing the type of tailored work that they can be doing, but they are still doing real work and getting paid and kind of contributing for the society and being part of the work employment force. And then some possibilities would be kind of, but it requires to have some kind of a reactive role of the student themselves. Some student with physical disabilities, they can work as an entrepreneur, self-employed, but of course it requires more skills from the kind of a academic and mental capacity. But there are different types of disabilities. But I think that kind of the school could also bring the awareness to the society that we do have disabled students who become disabled adults with I don't like the disabled student or disabled adult. Sorry, I'm saying wrong. This is the language thing, because we are all people and we have individual kind of challenges everyone has, and for some people that might be a disability. So we have students who have disabilities, and we then will have adults who have disabilities. So we should learn our society that in workforce we should have places for also for people who have disabilities, because then the companies would learn maybe to find the working opportunities for all kinds of workforce. But again, these are difficult issues and cannot be answered today, but just to give you maybe some thinking. And in Brunei, we teachers still have vague understanding in it, and in many countries people have, yeah, I totally understand that. And in Myanmar, there is 2 types of vocational training for, this is probably for the visual impaired students, the cane craft and massage, yeah. So maybe in the society, the society should kind of see that, for example, the visual impairment, if it's only for visual, that it shouldn't stop people doing things, because many blind people are very well capable of doing all kinds of things, and they shouldn't be excluded or only used for cane craft or massage work. But that's kind of starting to see the opportunities. That would be something, but it is not easy. And there is an example of a person who has been working with one low vision student with multiple disability for 5 years. And there has been a lot of activities such as cooking, baking, gardening, handicrafts, drawing, functional maths, and so on. That is wonderful, great. And he's always the student eager to learn new things every day. That is great. He follows instructions very well. I only have one problem with him. He only speaks to 2 friends in the classroom. He only nods his head to my questions or whispers to his friend and let that friend speak on his behalf. But when he goes back home, he will message me a lot of questions, sharing his favorite cartoon videos or talk about his hobbies. I tried to make him talk to teachers and the other friends, but there is no improvement. I also did not want to remove his best friend from his side so that he can speak on his own, because this is just cruel. In your opinion, what else can I do to encourage him to speak to everyone, not to certain someone only? Yeah, first of all, that is great that this student is active and willing to do all kinds of things. That is wonderful. And then it is also great that there is this one best friend that he trusts and can kind of use to communicate with, and that is great. Don't remove that option from him. I totally agree. Please continue using that. And then you get all kinds of messages from him after school, and videos and hobbies. So a few things come to my mind. Maybe communicating during these technological devices is easier for the student than communicating in words. And if that is the case, maybe you could ask the student that if he would be willing to provide some kind of message or question that he would be willing to share with the whole class. That then in school, of course, with his permission, you could message him and ask if he would be willing to have one message for the whole class, and then the class could reply to him in school in verbal methods or online, but kind of using his methods on communication instead of this is the first step, instead of a kind of a wanting him to use the methods that other ones is using, kind of flipping the table, that allowing him to use his communication style more. So, and would it be possible to use these technological or digital tools for communication also in the school level? But then the other thing is that for life, we are also preparing our children for life. So it would be, like you mentioned, it would be very good that the students would be able to trust, to share his thinking and start talking with more people, not just only the one best friend. So to me, this sounds like it could be a trust issue. Maybe the student has bad experiences. It might be a kind of personality issue. We are not the same. Some people, even non-disabled students, are very quiet, do not want to talk, are scared in talking, need a lot of encouragement. And then thirdly, is that child, does he have kind of a difficulties in kind of is he worried that he will say something wrong, or his voice sounds weird, or somebody would laugh at him because he uses wrong words or voice or language or something like that. But if you could just start, I don't know if you have time to talk with him together, or with the best friend that he already feels comfortable with, and you as the three of you to talk, and then start adding people one at a time to the conversation to kind of give good experiences and encouragement. I don't know if it would work, but things like that come to my mind. And hopefully you could talk with the parents and ask if that is the same thing that happens at home. Is that student talking at home with peers and with family members? And if not, maybe it will be difficult to get him to speak in school if his preference that he doesn't talk too much. But if he speaks at home but not at school, then just keep on encouraging. But if he doesn't speak at home either, maybe you want to consult his doctor, that if there would be some kind of a reason why that child is not talking, maybe try to find if there is a medical reason behind it, because then it's difficult to kind of address if there is a medical reason. And if the child is not talking at home, maybe encourage the parents to get him talking home first, and then bring that to school after the talking in the home environment starts to kind of go better. Things like that. Then, is there an example of job transition program in Finland? I could, the job transition, that thing, it's not my field of expertise, but I could try and find out. I will write it down and I will come back to you. So I'll come back to you that tomorrow. And if there is a question, if you have vocational training program available for blind children in Finland, and how you arrange it, and what kind of job careers are taught to them. No, there is no specific training for blind children, because our secondary, we call it secondary education after 16 years old, and there is the academic field and the TVET, academic track and TVET track. And our system is inclusive, so we do not have different programs for different disabilities. So everybody has the same programs, and the contents of the programs are then tailored for the people who are taking the program. But of course, this means that then when the people are choosing the field of training that they would like to proceed, we really need to sit down with the student, teacher, parents, guidance counselor, and have the discussion with the students that if this job that you would like to have in the future is suitable for you because of your disability. And if after that discussion, or everybody agrees that this job would work for you and you could go around your disability and you could find ways to overcome the obstacles that you have because of your disability, then you can try to get into that training program. But there is the application then, and then if you are accepted, after that they start to kind of individualize the program for you. But for these children who are very severely disabled or handicapped, we have special programs for them, but they are not for blind. So they are not based on the diagnosis, but they are just kind of overall programs. And then they tailor the program inside the training program, because many, for example, blind people have also problems with hearing or moving around. So there is not only one disability you need to have the flexibility with, you need to have more flexibilities, but no blind training specifically. And then there is a question, who supervise them during OTJ. I don't know what is OTJ. Is it the training itself, the OTJ? On-job training, yes,
It's on-job training.
On-job training, yes. Who supervise them? Yeah, there is two kinds of supervision. First, when they go to the job training, every student has a supervisor from the working place itself. And then the student has a supervisor from the school. So two supervisors, and the on-job supervisor is there all the time, kind of looking after that student, not necessarily sitting next to the student, because that is not possible, but kind of being there available and looking after if there are some problems coming. But then there is the other supervisor from the school side, and that supervisor needs to visit the job place, the workplace regularly, to see how things are going and if there are any specific needs or problems that needs to be addressed, and giving guidance to the supervisor on the job field. So two supervisors. But then of course the job that the student is going, and if the students have some specific needs because of the disability they have, then of course we need to choose a right supervisor. Because if the supervisor has an attitude problem towards this individual, or doesn't want to work with disabled people, then that doesn't work at all. So, and of course the job that a person is going to needs to be suitable for that person. So it needs a lot of tailoring, both finding the right workplace and then find the right supervisor from the job. So those two issues. Would there be something else, or could you be able to provide me kind of a few words on the chat box, that what do you think that would or are the biggest obstacles for the inclusive education to really take place in the real world, in a kind of the school level that we are in? So the biggest obstacles that we are fighting, that would be very beneficial for me to kind of hear from you that. what do you find to be the biggest problems or obstacles in getting to the inclusive education settings? Please share with me on the chat if you have something in mind. Even one word would be enough. Acceptance.
Anyone? Acceptance. Yeah.
Yes. Getting the support. Yeah. I write them down. Getting support. Yeah. This getting the support, that is difficult one, because in many cases, the support needs some kind of resources. And now we are struggling in many countries with the finances, that we do not have like additional resources that we could kind of throw in and hire new teachers or make the group sizes smaller or buy all the aids and equipments that are needed or add technical kind of laptops or other assistant devices or get more kind of support services for our students. But then what I have been thinking with the development programs that we have been having in Finland, that we have the same situation in Finland, that teachers would like to have more resources, and that is not possible. So what we need to be doing, I always figure that the resources are kind of let's say Lego blocks or building blocks, that different resources are different building blocks. And then you can take all the building blocks. Now you have been building something with those blocks. You have a system already. You have used all your building blocks to build a system. But you can take all those blocks, put them together in a bag and shake, and then take all the building blocks and see what else could be done with those. Maybe you could build a different type of system or structure, or use the resources that you already have in a different way. New way, more effective way, more innovative way. Maybe do something together with other people to kind of combine the resources that I have with the resources that you have, and then make new structures. That is needed. Because if we just want something more and more, it's never going to happen. And then there is unawareness from teachers and parents. Yes. Understanding. I totally agree. And then the unawareness and understanding. I think that is one of the good things on the inclusive education kind of a methodology and practice, is that when we start including everyone with the disabilities to the mainstream environments, the understanding starts to build. When we interact with different people, work together with different people, we start understanding them better. So I do not understand too much about living in the moon. I've never been there. I'm not interested in it. But if I suddenly was sent to moon and then I was forced to live there, I would start understanding that. And it is not as drastic as this example of living in the moon. But if I was now changed to be teaching in a school that is an inclusive school, and I started to see different students with different disabilities, working with special education teachers, I would start understand and I would start learn. And then I would start to get hopefully interested. And then I would hopefully start trying myself. And I would say that this kind of would be the benefit from the inclusive approach also. Spread the understanding. And then adapt to ongoing changes. That is so important. I totally agree. People have a tendency, and that's a biological tendency, that we want to stick to what we already know and what we can do and what we are comfortable with. We want to stay in our safety zone here. We don't want changes. They are scary. We don't know how to behave when things are changing. And that means that adapting to ongoing changes is difficult. And some people are different. Some people, like myself, I'm very resilient. I like changes. I kind of look for them. I wanted to move to Malaysia and leave my family in Finland and kind of experiment new things. It's kind of my personality, but not all the people are the same. There are a lot of people who, for example, my little sister, she doesn't want to change at all. She wants everything to stay the same. And sometimes it's difficult for me to understand that my own little sister does not want any changes and I want changes all the time. And we grew up in the same family. We were raised up in the same way, in the same environment, and still we are different. So kind of adapting to ongoing changes, it differs. And I would give an advice that if you need to make a change, find the people who are willing to make the change and who are the ones who are excited with the change, and start with them. And then the other ones, they probably will follow you. But if you try to get everybody involved at the same time, it's probably not going to happen. It's going to be difficult. But starting with the ones who have the personality to be the first one to try to find them and work with them to start with, and then bring the others in. And then there are other obstacles and about the students, that they are more comfortable doing work at home with mom and school. Yes, I totally get it. Involvement with parents. Yes, very difficult. Getting the support from schools, administration, awareness and understanding. Building relationships. I totally agree with you. Very good points. Thank you for sharing those with me. And I think that we are now ending our morning session, and I'm sorry that I kind of misunderstood the timing, but I hope that you are not too bored with hearing my voice. And now we will have a break, and then we will be coming back at 2:30.
Yes, we will. 2:30 Malaysia time.
Yes, and then we will have a little bit more new topics, and also then you get to go to the breakout rooms and have discussion between yourselves. So first we are gonna be here together, and I will say a few words about the instructional designs and strategies, and then a little bit more about the curriculum development and application, because there were so many issues that there is to be covered. So I will focus more on the curriculum issue, and then after that there will be a group discussion in breakout rooms for you. I will share with you a topic that I would like you to discuss, and then tomorrow we will not share those outcomes of the discussions today. We will be looking at those tomorrow morning when we start. We have a long session again in the morning, so we start with the presentations from these breakout groups and breakout rooms. And I will tell you more then before we go to breakout rooms, what the task would be. But those would be the topics. So first, about the instructional designs and strategies. And yesterday we had quite detailed kind of a point of view, and now I will be looking a little bit kind of a wider umbrella issues. And I would like to start with this because I really believe that the children of the world, we are all in this together. And it doesn't really matter in which country we are or which continent. We all share certain things. And the things are that we love our children, and they are very important to us. And we are doing the best we can to support them and their growth and their learning. So we have a common goal, and we understand that being an educator, a teacher, it is a very important role. But then what we are doing in the countries, that is a little bit different. And that is understandable, of course. We have different circumstances, we have different cultures, we have different history. We even may have different goals, what we are trying to achieve, and not even to mention that the roads that we are taking when we're trying to achieve the goals, they are very different from each other, but the purpose is the same. And that is why we can learn from each other, we can share experience with each other. And I'm not here to say that one experience would be better than the other. They are just different. And something that works for us may not work for you. And then something that works for you does not necessarily work for us. But it doesn't matter, because in everything there might be some idea or detail that we can use to develop our thinking and our system and our practices. And this is what we are trying to achieve when we are communicating globally in education to benefit the children of the world. And the guiding principle, from my perspective, is when we talk about support, is that support measures form a continuum, where we first start from the general forms of support, the kind of that easy to understand. We open the doors and we help children to put their clothes on and learn them how to read and eat and sleep and go to bathroom and everything that the child is doing as a part of the growing process. And we support children on that. But then we do have children and situations that do not learn with these general forms of support. And they then need more intensive support at some things, not with everything, but some things. And that is according to the needs of that individual student. And then when we talk about the inclusiveness in education, the basic principle was that the students are studying in their own familiar reference group, in their own environment, with their kind of friends in the neighborhood, whenever possible. Because there was the other principle we talked earlier about finding the solutions that are best for that individual child, and also providing the support needed. So this is quite simple to put on words, but it is not simple to put on action. As we know, we all have been working with children who do need this intensive support, and then it gets complicated. And there is a need for many, many innovations and kind of learning opportunities for us. And then other thing I like what Hattie said in 2015 is this aspect of human contacts. And in education, in schools, these human contacts are the teachers. So the biggest factor in students' learning outcomes and success are competent, inspired, and passionately towards their work-related teachers, and also school leaders, because leaders need to make sure that the school is running smoothly and there are resources and there are possibilities for teachers to work. And then also the teachers and school leaders who work together, so they are able to maximize the impact of teaching to their pupils. So I would like to start with these two. But then when we look to the future and we think that what might be the type of citizen that we would be needing in the future, because we need to get some kind of idea in our heads so we could then decide what to teach in schools and how to teach that, regardless of the disability or not. And this was the exercise we did a couple of years ago. And when we were writing our new core curricula in Finland, and I want to share this picture with you because I think that this captures a few of the things that I think are shared globally, because we want our future citizens to be active and innovative. They should be creative and able to use their competencies. They should have many skills. They should be lifelong learners, committed in their community. They should appreciate and respect other people. They should be confident with their own knowledge and skills, and they should be future oriented, so they are kind of looking forward. And they should be at some level, at least international and multilingual, because for example, internet and technology is bringing world closer and closer together, and we always hear news from abroad and get to meet people from different countries. So it's then needed that we do also understand something about the international issues. Then citizens in the future need to be critical and analytical, and they need to be interactive and cooperative. And this, if we think that these are the things that our people should be like when they grow up, then of course we need to start thinking that we should be supporting our students in achieving these kinds of skills also in the school level. And when you look at these skills, you notice that they are not the type of skills that you can lecture or give a lesson. So children would listen and learn and then know after that. But these are the type of things that are developed when doing things, discussing in practice, and kind of also in informal school settings, but also informal settings in home and other learning environments. So learning is kind of a thing that happens everywhere. And when we look at this list of skills, we as special education teacher, I think that we also agree that there are a lot of things that we already have been aiming to achieve with our disabled students. And then when we go inside the school and look at the teaching and learning kind of process and what we need to be doing there, is that there are a lot of things, but I just wanted to highlight some that I find to be important. First, we need to have some kind of operational culture in our schools. So it could be kind of, we think that it's not individuals that go to schools, but it's people who then form a community, school community, and there is communality inside the school. People want to work together. and people have common principles, shared principles. Teachers do cooperate with each other. They work with different people, different stakeholders. They work fairly and consistently, and they cooperate with parents. But then schools also need to have rules and regulations, because if we didn't have any rules and regulation, then it would just be individuals coming in and doing whatever they want to do. And that won't work, and we know that. So we need rules that we have agreed together, and then we need to guide according to those rules. Then, of course, we need to control a little bit, because if somebody is not doing as we have jointly agreed, there needs to some kind of discipline and also sanctions. But with sanctions, I don't mean here that we should be rude to people or hurt them. There shouldn't be any kind of a physical punishment or anything kind of a hurt people physically or emotionally, but the sanctions should be something that could kind of help people to understand that they have been doing wrong, and then they should correct their actions. And the best way to do this, at least from the Finnish perspective, is to really have very, very deep discussions and guidance, kind of sitting down and explaining what has been done wrong and how should you correct your actions. And then we need to pay attention to pedagogy. So what do we think about learning? What is learning? And then we need to plan our lessons well. We need to give clear assignments to our students. We cannot be vague. The students need to understand what is expected from them. And then the learning environments need to be very suitable for them. And then we need to use variety of different groupings, for example. So we are not studying necessarily in the same group of students all the time, but we can change the groups or form smaller groups and bigger groups and change that. And then especially important when we talk about the special education students is to create a caring atmosphere where we teach, yes, but we also take care. And then the trust is very important. We need to trust each other, and parents need to trust the schools. We need to respect each other and respect the children, respect families and their choices. And also parents should respect the choices that schools are making. And this is all kind of, this all needs trust, so it will happen. It is important that the teachers and students have very good interaction between them, and then there needs to be participation. So the students are not passive, but they are active participants of their environment. So then when we go closer to the school level and the teachers and schools and teachers to really think what would be the questions that we would ask teachers and want them to answer, but not necessarily alone, but as a part of the community. First of all, when we think about the student, let's take an individual student here. We get a new student to our class, and then we need to start thinking. First is, where is the education arranged? And let's assume that our education system is inclusive, and we need to keep in mind that we have the best interest of the child in our minds. And then first we need to decide that is that student studying in the regular classroom with support services? Is he or she studying in special education class or in special school? And then these can also be mixed, like we talked earlier this morning, that sometimes the student can be in the regular classroom part-time and then go to the special education class part-time. But then these things vary in different countries depending on which type of approach they have agreed to take in their national education planning. But then secondly, teachers need to decide that what are the needs for the support, or try to find out the needs for the support. So what is the support that needs to be provided all the time? And what is the support that needs only every once in a while, short amount of time? Then we need to see what are the big support needs and what are the smaller ones. And then we need to see that is there only one kind of disability, or if there is multiple disabilities that needs to be addressed. And then we need to see that what kind of support can we offer. So we have a lot of different options in school, and hopefully you have a toolkit as a teacher, kind of pedagogies, methodologies, activity materials. Hopefully you have something to choose from, so you can pick the ones that you would believe that are best suitable for your student. And the support then that we offer should be flexible, planned carefully, and the support should also change when the need of the student is changing. But if we go to Finland, I try to collect here only few things that are maybe the key issues in Finnish education system. First of all, I want to talk about the teachers. Teachers in Finland are qualified. They all have master's degree. And they are also very respected. So, for example, when I applied for a university to study special education to become a teacher, 3% of the applicants got in. So it is very difficult to get into university to study to become a leader. But that tells a story about respect towards teachers. So when the profession is respected, then it's also valued in the country. But that has a long history in Finland, because Finland used to be a very poor country, very poor. And it started to change after Second World War. And that was in 1950s. So it's not very long history in Finland. But one of the key elements why Finland started to develop well was that we wanted to focus on education. And Finland has a lot of small villages and rural places still. And in each village, there were maybe 3 people that were respected the most all old ages. I talk now about 1950s. There was a priest and a doctor and a teacher. And they were the most respected people in Finnish small village. And it's kind of a historical thing that teachers are still respected in our country. And then teachers in Finland, they are using flexible and very versatile learning methods. They change them all the time, and they can pick and choose. And then the quality of our teacher training is also quite good. And then when we look at the students, the teaching is based on individual support systems. We believe in early interventions, and we believe that the students are active and they have active role. Also special education and disabled students. So these go with everybody. And then when we look at the education system, it's based on the inclusive, like I've been telling you now a few times. And it's very comprehensive. We look issues and kind of in whole, and kind of try to keep the continuums going on. And we do have central guidance and support from the national level and from the government level, but the Finnish education system is very autonomous. So for example, schools can choose their own teachers. When there is a teacher position open, they advertise on online or papers, or then all the applicants who want to apply a teacher position, they apply. And then after that, the principal with a team that he or she has put together, they read all the applications, and then they invite people for interview. And then they choose the teacher that they think that suits best for their school. In many places, the schools do not make the decision by themselves. They then need to kind of take that case to the municipal level, like the local area level, and the local director then sits down with the principal and they have the discussion if this is a right person to be hired. But usually the local director has nothing to say about the process, and the principals can pretty much hire whoever they want if they are qualified teachers and if they can show that this is the best match for us. And also teachers in the classrooms are very independent, so they can choose the materials that they are using, and they can use also the methods that they are using. But the goals for training, that is clearly set in national papers, and teachers cannot choose those, but they can just choose the methods and materials, how they want to achieve the goals, because children are different and not the same materials are working with all the children. So they need to kind of choose different materials for different students. And okay. Let me see, was there any
You're open for Q&A now, Dr. Aya?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm trying to, but I can go on and please put questions to the text box, chat box, and I continue now because now we go to the curriculum issues, but
Okay, Doctor.
just keep on putting on the questions. Let me go back to them here. And now let's talk about the curriculum and how to develop and use the curriculum. So this is kind of the starting point, students at the center. We start from here. And first we need to, of course, decide what we want our children to learn. But now when we go kind of to the inclusive education direction, we need to start thinking more and more how we learn, because students learn so differently. So this one model with teacher teaching one way doesn't work with all these different kind of students that we have in our classrooms. So this is kind of a picture of curriculum design and the levels that you might have in curriculum, because different countries have different systems. But most of the countries have this national level curriculum, the core curriculum in the national level. So that I believe that we do have in every country. But then we have different systems. Some countries like Finland have a curriculum on local level. And that means that we need to take the national level core curriculum. I can show it to you. This is the Finnish national core curriculum. One book for everybody. This is for all the children. This is from age 7 to age 16 for everybody. Special education, disabled, everybody. We all use this. So this is the main this is what teachers need to know and learn, and they need to know the goals in here. And then when they know that, then they start writing a local level curriculum. So in local level curriculum, they explain how they are going to achieve everything that is said in this national book. Of course, this is nowadays online, but I also wanted to have a paper copy because I like paper books. So the local level curriculum is more detailed. And I think it would kind of be a plan. Even if you didn't have a local level curriculum, or if you call it in a different name, you still probably have some kind of paper or a strategy that you, in your local level, you kind of decide how things are done in your own area or in your own state. Because every state, for example, or regional area may have some different challenges that they need to look or answer, or something that it's special for them and not for other states, for example. And then in some systems may even have a school level curriculum, but of course then they do not set their own goals or anything like that, but they just go deeper in the planning. But this school level curricula can also be called a school level kind of a action plan or development plan or assessment plan. It has different names, but we have these levels in curricular design in many countries, and they are not all present, but they might be having different names. And then when we look to the left and to the right side, what are kind of the supporting pillars and very important issues is that we need to have a teacher training and teachers' continuous professional development that keep up the curricular changes. So if we change something in the curriculum, we need to teach the teachers what are the changes and how the change in curricula affects to teachers' work. Because if we just send them the new papers and say that just use the new curricula now, it's not gonna work. Teachers need support, examples, classes, advice. And then on the other hand, if we have a new curricula, we need to have the resources that we can put that new curricula in use. And in many cases, we have the same resources still, but we might be needing to arrange those resources differently. And then if the curricula changes, then we need to change our learning materials also. So the learning materials would reflect the new items in the new curricula. So these all need to be moving together. And I would say that if we want to change something, then we need to focus on all of these aspects. And then when we go a little bit deeper to these levels, and all levels have accountability issues, because we need to decide that what are the people in each level doing. And I took this from Finland because I know this best, but this is just an example. Your picture would be different, and it is okay. It's totally okay. But in Finland, if we look at the national level, we have the education policy guidelines, and those are set by government and Ministry of Education. Then we have Education Act and Decree, and then we have National Core Curriculum, and then we have a National Education Strategy. But then we go to the education providers level, and when I talked you earlier about my kind of what I have been doing before, I told you that I was in one of the municipality as an education leader in one local level. So that was the education providers level. So I was responsible as a leader about the local curriculum in our area and local strategies in our area and local development targets in our area. And of course, these all need to be in line with the national level strategy. So I can't do something that is not in line with the national guidelines. And then there are school level planning, and that involves teaching and learning processes and how we implement the curriculum in practice and what is the working culture in the school. So now we go in details. We go to the school class level. We look at the individual students' teaching and learning processes and what are the teachers doing in schools? What are the materials they are using? What are the classrooms that they are teaching in? When are the breaks? How do we contact the parents? When do we have the teachers' meetings? How do we interact with our principals? Things like that. Very practical issues. And when I talked about the continuums, that goes also to the curriculum development. So I would hope that in each country, we probably have different curriculums and should have. We might have a curriculum for early childhood education or preschool education, curricula for primary, curricula for secondary, curricula for tertiary, curricula for TVET, and so on. But all these curricula should speak kind of the same language. So where the preschool curricula ends, then the primary curricula should pick up. So there wouldn't be gaps between the curriculums, but it would be a continuum. So that children would continue learning, regardless of special education or mainstream education students. But I see a curriculum to be a tool for development in education. And curriculum can really launch the change. Like I told you that when in Finland, we started to use the new curriculum in 2014. After that, because it was all about inclusive education, after that, the teachers couldn't say anymore that I don't want to do that because they had to. So it really launched the change. The change started to happen slowly, but yes, started to happen. And then when we look at the change in the big picture, we need to have the idea what we want, and then we are planning the details, how we do that. So the details support the big change. If we just design small details and we have no goal, what we are aiming for, then we will have a system that goes all over the place, and we get very kind of confused that what are we doing and what are we trying to achieve. And of course, it's important in curriculum that we write the substance, the topics, kind of each subject has some topics and things that we want our children to learn in, for example, math and science and English and our mother tongue and so on. But in curriculum, we also could be explaining what we believe is the role of the teachers, role of the students, kind of the whole nation uses now then the same idea that this is the role of teachers and students in our country. Then in curriculum, we could decide what is the working culture and pedagogy, multiple of them. And then we describe how we make sure that the competencies are developed, the teacher trainings and continued professional development needs. We say something about the learning environments, about inclusion and support services, our extracurricular activities and roles of stakeholders. And these things change from country to country, but these are examples that what curriculum could hold inside of it, not only the topics that we are learning in classrooms, but also kind of the overall guidelines for our school operations. But then when we look at the curriculum for special education needs students, then we have different systems in different countries. So some countries have specialized curricula for special education children and some don't. And like we have been discussing that there might be a curricula for blind, curricula for deaf, curricula for mental disorders, and so on and so on. So, for example, in Finland, we only have one national curricula, and everybody, that's kind of the baseline. Everybody is learning according that one national curricula. But then, because we have the students with disabilities, then we start doing the individualization process. So, because every child is different and they have different disabilities and different needs. So also the adjustments that need to be made are different. So first of all, we have the child here. I just use this as our child, our student. And then we have the curricula here now. And now we start looking. Can this child study according to this curricula in all aspects? Some he can, some he cannot. And those parts that he cannot study according to that mainstream curricula, to those parts we write to him an individual personalized curriculum goals. So that is kind of the main idea in thinking in Finland. So we always try to use that basic one, but if that is not possible, then we adjust the parts that are not possible for that student. And those things are then written to the individual education plan. I will tell you more about that tomorrow and give examples, but that's kind of the main goal. But also it's important to look at the child's strengths, but then on the other hand, the individual needs and kind of issues that the child is facing. And then we have also children that has so many problems and so severe disabilities that they cannot pretty much do anything according to the subject learning. So in Finnish model, they are taught in school by activity areas. So they are not taught by subjects, but by activity areas. So they only have 5 goals to learn, as social and daily living skills, and motor and sensomotor skills, linguistic skills, cognitive skills, and things like that. Because we do understand that some disabilities are so severe that there is no point, there is not possible to try to teach those students, for example, English, if they cannot even eat. So we all understand that. But maybe a little bit more about the Finnish core curriculum kind of design before we look at the contents a little bit more. First, there is a general guidelines, and that's about explanation, what is school culture and what are we looking for. We explain about the learning environments, about the learning methods, the student assessment, and then all the support measures and how that is done, and student welfare issues. Then in curricula, there is 7 competencies, and each component, they do not have kind of specific classes, but they are taught at the same time with the subject contents. And all the competencies are kind of learned all the time in all the activities. And then we have multidisciplinary learning modules, and that's a minimum of 1 each year, but usually schools do more. But this is, I think, something that we in special education do all the time. That's kind of the exercise that you had yesterday, that you needed to kind of design an activity where you were doing something and then you were learning multiple things from multiple subjects and topics at the same time. So this multidisciplinary learning module is just is that. So it's required in the curriculum level teachers to do so. And then we have, of course, the subjects. We have a bucket of subjects, grades 1 and 2, grades 3 and 6, and grades 7 and 9, and they then explain all the objectives and content areas and pedagogical guidelines and criteria for assessment for those. But we do not have national exams. So teachers are doing the assessment for their students, and they have all the guidelines on this curricula, and they just then compare what the child knows to the knowledge that is required from the student in the curricula. And then teacher makes the assessment and gives the grades to the students. Usually countries have national tests, but we do not have that. And there is not too many countries in the world who does not have national tests. So I need to usually explain that why Finland chose that road, but that is just the case. And we do not have any inspections neither, so no inspectors at all. So it's kind of based on trust, the whole issue. But then we do have these competencies, and I think that with special education or disabled student, these competencies are key. So we need to develop the competencies of our students, taking care of ourselves, managing daily lives, then have some kind of cultural competence, how to be a member of our culture and our nation, and also international cultures, how we interact with other people, how we express ourselves. We need to be multilateral, and that doesn't mean only reading, but we need to understand pictures and what pictures means. For example, theater or dance or cultural kind of artificates, what they mean. And we also need to understand the internet world, because there is a lot of false information online nowadays. So we need to teach our students how to kind of be literate also online. And then we need to have some basic ICT competence, how to use the technological tools and digital tools. We need to have some working life competence and entrepreneurship, willingness and skills. We need to participate and influence in order to build the sustainable future. And then we need to have thinking skills and learning how to learn skills. And these are all embedded in all teaching and learning processes as a part of the process. But then if we go to the support part, I think this is a Finnish model, but I think that this is something that is in every country's kind of thinking, and every country has a different model. And I now want you to think about your country's model, and if there could be some kind of connections in your mind that how would this look like in your system. So in Finnish system, we have 3 levels of support. And we have the general support that is for everybody. Then we have intensified support that is for some. And then special education that is only for few. And now I will be saying a few words about these different support levels, just to kind of trying to explain that what is the teaching and learning process from this perspective, if we look it from this perspective. So first of all, the general support, I think, is very important if we have an inclusive education system, because that means that all the students have need for support at some point of time. I am sure that everyone, all the people in this world need support sometimes, even adults. I have needed support many times in my life, and I have been lucky to get the support when I needed that. But in my case, for example, when I needed the support and I got the support, I got over it. So things got better. And I then didn't need the support anymore, and I was able to continue my life. And that is the same thing with our students. And the general support is the kind of thinking that we are assuming problems to arise. And when problems to arise, we do something about it. And at that point, we don't really pay too much attention to it because it's normal to have issues. And each student, each teacher is then responsible for providing the general support for their students. And these might be very small things. For example, there might be a child that do not know how to put the jacket on. So we help them. That was a action of support, but we don't think it that way because it comes so naturally to us that we help our students, but we are not thinking that we are supporting them actually. And that is a learning process, that we are teaching them how to put the coat on. But that's it. That is very basic type of information. Or if we saw kind of a bullying situation in the schoolyard, that the people are fighting or saying bad things to each other, then we go there and we stop that. We have discussion with the students and we explain that this is not okay. And that is an act where we are supporting students in their cooperation with other people. And that is also supporting students. So you can now hopefully you get the idea that these general support measures could be quite small. But then there are bigger measures also that can be done in the general support level, and that then we can differentiate the teaching somehow. Everybody doesn't need to do the same things. The goals are the same, and when we assess the students, the criteria is still the same, but the methods and the things that the children are using may be different from each other. All children do not need to do the same thing. Then if they don't understand something, they don't know, we teach them a new skill and they don't learn it, we need to provide them additional kind of opportunities to learn and support in that. We need to be cooperative with parents, we need to be cooperative with other teachers and with student welfare service people. We need to offer guidance and counseling when it's needed, and we need to be flexible in our groupings. And if then some child falls behind, for example, has been sick for a week away from school and then didn't learn anything during that week, when the child comes back to school, we need to give additional remedial teaching classes after school to catch up, or other supporting materials. And then we do have this part-time special needs education teacher support, like I was working when I went to school classes and students, to give them additional support. And that can be done in a general support level. It doesn't need to be special education child in order to get that support. And also normal regular students can have an individualized learning plan, and individualized learning plan can also be made for very clever and kind of a well doing students, so they could get kind of more challenges, because if the teaching and learning is too easy for them, they might get bored and they might start behaving badly in the classroom because they are bored. So we could have individualized learning plans, so they would have more activities and more goals add to their learning. And then if there are some services and aids that children need, they need to be provided that, and school assistant services and co-curricular activities are all available as part of a normal everyday school life. But then if that is not enough, then we need to kind of start looking more intense support. And also this stage is still responsibility of each teacher, each mainstream teacher in regular classrooms. And all the support services that I just mentioned are there available. But then there needs to be done a pedagogical assessment. So we need to assess that student, look that student very carefully. I will explain you tomorrow when we talk about the individualized education plan, a little bit more about this assessment. But when we do the assessment, it is then not enough anymore that we just talk with the parents and talk with the students and other teachers in our school. Then we need to have cooperation with the multidisciplinary student welfare team. I was telling about the psychologist, social worker, health worker, and guidance counselors and people like that. So we then, if for example, if the child has problems with the vision, we need to involve the school nurse or school doctor to the discussion to find out from that kind of a health sector's point of view that what can be done and what is the problem, and if we have tried everything we can already. And also parents and students need to be sitting in the same tables to have this discussion, kind of starting to have the discussion what needs to be done differently. And then there needs to be this personalized, individualized learning plan, and then the teaching and learning process will be according to that plan. But still all the assessment is against the normal, regular kind of guidelines that are in the curriculum, but we are just changing the ways how we work, how we offer the support, and what other methods we are using, but still we are aiming to achieve the same goals. And the plan needs to be assessed and changed minimum once a year. And of course, we need to monitor and assess the learning regularly. But then we do have the students that are disabled or have severe learning disabilities or other disabilities that they cannot achieve their growth development targets or learning objectives, even if we tried all that support already. So it is not enough. And for example, if we then think that the best possible place for that student would be studying in a special education class, then they always need to be here in a special support, a triangle, small triangle at the top. So special education class is only for those students that we have been trying to do a lot already, but it just wasn't enough. And then all range of support measures are available, and then we can individualize the curriculum as much as needed in this level. But also the special support need to be provided in regular mainstream education whenever it is possible and if it is the best interest of the child. So we are not taking the child away from that environment. But then this is such a heavy kind of tool to use, that if we are using the special support for a child, there needs to be an official decision made on special support. And that is accordance with the Administrative Act. So that is then a legislative kind of issue. And that this is quite a difficult process and heavy process. But it's used, and I would say that about 8% of children in Finland study on this special support level. And of course, all the special education students need to have their individual education plans. And again, it needs to be done with the pupil welfare team, and they need to have the support according to the individual plan. But then the difference here is that when all the other levels, the goals, the syllabi of each subject has been the same according to the national curricula. Here in special support level, it is possible to individualize one or more syllabi subject. Earlier in Finland, I think it changed 1980. In 1980, we had a different curriculum for special education students. So when children went to special support level or special education, they all started to study according to the special education curriculum. That was the old days. But then there were so many issues and problems with it. So we get rid of that model and went to the model that we have only one curricula, and after that everything is individualized in a personal level if needed. Because with the special education curricula, the problem was that our students were so different. So it didn't kind of help the student, because the curricula and syllabi needs to be just on the right level. If it's too difficult, students are not learning. But if it's too easy, they get bored and we lose all the capacity they have. So we need to find the right level on the syllabi. And then when we try to use the special education curricula, there were these gaps that at some parts of the special education curricula were too difficult for that student, and some things were too easy. So that's why we didn't use that anymore. And now we just adjust the parts that need to be adjusted. But if we individualize a subject or topic in the syllabi, so if we do not anymore try to teach the student the topics that are in the national curricula, and we make the own goals for the students, then we also start using a different assessment system. And then after that, we also, because we assess the children differently, then the children also need a kind of a different teaching and learning process in their classrooms. And that is kind of the special education part that then takes place or is happening. And also if there is some subject for the student that the student cannot learn, then we can decide that the child doesn't need to study that. For example, if we have children who has a lot of disabilities, and for example, already learning English is difficult for that student, and then when it comes to time that the student should start learning Swedish, again a new language, then we can decide that is not necessary for that child. So we don't expect them to learn the new subject, because we are thinking that it wouldn't be the best interest for the child. Use that time instead, for example, at least try to learn some English, or not. If not that, then try to use the time learning more Finnish and how to use the Finnish language, which is the mother tongue for most of the students in our country. But of course, then also the special support for students need to be looked frequently and do the changes if those are needed. But then I don't know if you have this, but we have the model that the comprehensive education for students, they have early childhood education and preschool, and then they start the comprehensive education, the basic education that lasts for 9 years. But if the child is very sick or very disabled, then we can make a decision that those children go to school for 11 years instead of 9, because we think that they need more time to learn. So 9 years is not enough, learning all the things that they should be learning. And these 11 years of teaching and learning is only for children with very severe disabilities. And that is again a kind of a very heavy decision, and it's not done lightly. And all the children who go through these 11 years of education, basic education, they all are special education students. And they usually study most of the time in special education class or smaller classes, but in mainstream school environment. And they also can be integrated to the mainstream classes if that is good choice for the student. And then there is this studying according to activity areas that I mentioned earlier, because most of the students study different subjects. Even the disabled students, they study subjects. They learn math and science and Finnish language and geography and history and reading and drawing and physical education and all that. So that is kind of a subject-based teaching. The goals and methods may be individualized or modified, but they still learn all the subjects. But for these very disabled students who all are part of this 11 years of education program, they may be studying according to activity areas. So they do not even try to study all the subjects. So they go to school in the morning, and usually they all have their personal assistants in the school, and the group is very small. It's usually 6 students. And then they are learning motor skills, language and communication skills, social skills, daily life skills, and then also cognitive skills. For example, if the school and teachers and everybody thinks that the child has capacity to learn to read, we teach them to read. Or if there is a capacity to do some calculations, we teach them math. But then those are very individualized kind of programs that are offered. But this is kind of I think that 2% of Finnish children are studying according to the activity areas. And I would say that these children who study according to activity areas, I don't believe that they never go to the working life. They are so severely disabled that they can never go and go to a workplace and find living. But I would say that everybody else, even if they have been studying in the special education classes, they still have enough skills so we could find them a place in the world to be trained and be kind of a part of the society, also contributing through labor and things like that. And then I'm looking, there is no questions on the chat box. I understand that there were so many already in the morning, and I appreciate all that. And if there is no questions now, then I could go to the kind of the breakout room thing that would then be the rest of the day. And this is the group work that I would like you to now take a look. The group work is about the operational culture in schools. Now I would like you to think of your school. And think 4 elements in your school. First, think which are the norms that you need to follow. What are the laws and regulations? What is your curriculum? What are the other instructions that are given to you by the school leader, for example, or other authority? If you have a strategy, think about that, and then think about the assessment, how that is done. Then secondly, please do think school from an organization perspective. Think about how the school is led. If you have any working groups there, who are the stakeholders and how do you cooperate with them? How do you cooperate with parents and homes? How do you recruit the teachers? How do you kind of help them to be part of your school community? And then maybe look at your resources. What are your resources, and if it's enough, or what is missing, or what are you glad about? And then please look at the learning environments. You can look the physical learning environments, the school buildings, but also look at the schoolyards and maybe outside school environments also. And also maybe the environments in students' homes, because they learn there a lot too. Then think about the pedagogical environments and social and emotional environments, if the students feel good and healthy and supported in the school environment. And then look at the school atmosphere. Think the pedagogies that you are using. How is the interaction going? How is the cooperation working? How do you participate to different actions? What are the structures for participation, and what are the attitudes that you are following? And if possible, please do take a picture of this picture, because you will be needing this in the breakout room. So if you think that you do not remember all these aspects, you can just take a picture of that, so you can go back to it and remember that, and then these things. But the questions that I would like you to talk about are the following. First, have a discussion about the operational culture in your school or in your organization if you are not working in the school. So think about how you work and what is the situation? How are the things that I just showed you? How does it look like? What is working and what needs to be changed? And I would like you to also concentrate to the positive things, because I would like us to be learning from each other, maybe hearing for the good examples and good practices, and share in the group with each other the good practices and development targets, and what you are trying to do, and what have you planning to do, and what do you think that would be good to do. Just bounce ideas that what is situation, what is working, what needs to be done, and then share with each other. So then tomorrow morning, when we come back at 10 a.m., I would like everyone or all groups to kind of tell the main group, all of us, that which were the key topics that you were discussing, or the findings that you found, And there is no need for you to tell everything that you discussed. And if there is some sensitive topics that you do not want to share, you don't need to do that. Because I think that there might be some issues coming up that you are a little bit kind of unsure if you want to say that aloud or not. So I encourage you to say those things in a group, but then you can decide later that what you want to share with others on tomorrow morning. So then tomorrow morning, if you maybe choose one person from your group to present, and maybe 5 minutes would be enough for you to kind of explain what you were talking. So we could all hear from each other, and I would hear and learn from you, because I really, really want to learn that here in the Eastern Asia Pacific area, what are the issues that you are talking about, what you find to be useful, and what are the topics that you would like to kind of develop or change or do differently. So this would be the task for your discussions today. And Suhaila, I'm correct here that we have now 45 minutes until 4:30. So 45 minutes, I think it's a good amount of time. And please do have the discussion, and you do not need to come back to the main room anymore after the discussion. So after your group is finished, you can use this 45 minutes, or you can maybe use more. If Suhaila, can the room be open longer, or do we close the room at 4:30?
Sure, we can extend the time for the breakout room until 5:15.
Yes, if your groups wants to do so, but if your group is ready, you are just leave. And you have your own life and all the responsibilities to do in your own life. So if your group is done by 4:30, please just leave. And there is no need to let us know or anything. Just leave the meeting, and we will meet here tomorrow morning. But if you feel that at 4:30 you still are in the middle of something and you need a few more minutes to discuss, the breakout room will be open. And now all the groups will have the same topic. So there will be no different topics for different groups. And also you will be automatically transferred to your breakout room. And that is randomized. So that is the exciting part of it. So you do not know in which group you will be assigned. So it will be kind of a surprise for you who you will end up with. And I think that's also kind of part of the learning and sharing process, that we work with people we do not know yet. Yeah. If we always talk only with people we already know, we kind of think talk about the same issues, but when we talk about the people we have never met before, we probably get more new ideas. So it will be randomized.
And this time around, there is no facilitator. The teachers are on their own to discuss.
Yeah, we trust you. This is the kind of the trust exercise also. So I truly trust that you are able to have the discussion amongst yourselves, and also before you end to decide the person who will be presenting tomorrow morning. You can decide to present a slide or a paper tomorrow morning and share it with us, but if you don't want to do that, you can only talk and kind of share verbally without any papers. But it's up to you. You can choose. There is a lot of methods that can be used. So you also have the freedom now to choose the method, how you present your outcomes. You can do a video if you want to, or do a play or act or a poem or a song. Yeah, but okay. Would you have questions at this point before you are sent to your breakout rooms?
Any questions to Dr. Aya before you are sent to the breakout room? Do you understand how to do the assignment? Assignment? Assignment sounds so serious. Do you know how to perhaps, handle the task before we send you to the breakout room? You can ask Dr. Aya.
Yeah. You can also take a picture of these questions if you want, or write them down if you find it. Okay, but I personally want to thank you about today. This has been my pleasure, and I hope that you got something out from my presentations, and if any new ideas came to your mind, then I would be very pleased. But we will continue tomorrow. I have new topics for tomorrow, and also questions. And there is a question: what are the subjects learned in Finland for grades? I will actually show it to you tomorrow. Yeah, the subjects. There is so many of them, so I will show them. Okay. We have many hours tomorrow, so I will go to the subjects. Yeah, okay. So thank you from my side, and have a very good conversation in your breakout room. And then we will be back here together as a whole group tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. So thank you so much.